Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I am here to inform you that your politicians are bought. Let it sink in. It hurts, it burns a little bit. You feel slightly betrayed by this. If you grew up in an education system, you think to yourself, no, that's shocking, there's no way that they're bought. If you're a little bit older, by the time you hit 30 or so, you realize, yes, it's true. Maybe by the time you're younger, at this point, it's become so much more overt. You already know this. Many of you already know this, especially if you watch this channel. But very rarely do you hear about it speak about in such stark terms as Mick Mulvaney spoke about it. Mick Mulvaney is a person who Trump put to head the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And in that, he was advising bankers on how to avoid some of the stringent regulations, quote unquote, stringent, some of the regulations associated with the Bureau. Beyond this point, though, he starts talking very frankly about how money worked when he was in Congress. How he paid attention to certain demographics that paid him cash while not necessarily paying demographics that did not. Now, I make this point starkly because it's hard. It is completely necessary to get this across, that this is how Washington works. That there's so much money sloshing about. And not just this is how, it makes sense that this is how it works. You have cash ensconced in your system. You have people needing to make like $1 billion running presidential elections. You have people trying to make thousands and thousands of dollars running congressional races. Of course, if you have this thing between pitchforks and dollars, if there are no pitchforks, then by virtue of not being pitchforks, dollars are going to win. Meaning if you don't have anybody pressuring the candidates, which oftentimes you don't, people are stuck working their jobs. People are terrified that they're going to lose their jobs. And they're running on this hamster wheel. They don't necessarily have time to look up to figure out what the hell their political leaders are actually doing. They're only seeing snapshots. The real power is the cash that flows in the process. Take a look at Mick, what he said. It's amazing to hear it put starkly, but I'm going to show something else after this. So this is not amazing at all, that this is just normal way of Washington. This is New York Times. Mulvaney, Watchdog Bureau's leader, advises bankers on ways to curtail the agency. That's bad enough. I'm trying to get more so specifically about what he was talking about when he was in Congress, because this is how money works in Congress. I understand what New York Times is talking about, but the main story here is, yes, this guy's corrupt, but Donald Trump put a bunch of people who are corrupt in those offices. What is he saying about how money works in Washington? And why isn't that somewhat of an outrage? That your political leaders are bought. Lock, stock, and bought. They're completely bought. What you want as a person in the political system itself matters squat. Unless you can put a lot of money behind you and get your own person to kind of nudge these guys as lobbyists. They're bought. There is no honest conversation. They're bought. Whatever rules, and let me make this clear. That doesn't mean that they won't make up some kind of reason to do something, but the reason is usually nonsense. Ultimately, the reason they're doing it is cash. If you look out where the money is going, that usually gets you this idea on the policies that these guys are going to take. Let's look at the article. I love this. Mick Mulvaney, the interim director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, told banking industry executives on Tuesday that they should pressure lawmakers to pursue their agenda and revealed that, as a congressman, he would meet with lobbyists only if they had contributed to his campaign. Why am I talking to you otherwise? Why would he talk to you otherwise? What would be the incentive for him to do that? All the incentives in this case is take the cash. We had a hierarchy in my office in Congress, Mr. Mulvaney, a former Republican lawmaker from South Carolina, told 1,300 bankers and lending industry officials at the American Bankers Association conference in Washington. If you're a lobbyist who never gave us money, I didn't talk to you. If you're a lobbyist who gave us money, I might talk to you. At the top of the hierarchy, he added, were his constituents. If you came from back home and sat in my lobby, I'd talk to you without exception, regardless of the financial contributions, Mr. Mulvaney said, who received nearly $63,000 from payday lenders for his congressional campaigns. Mr. Mulvaney also runs the White House Budget Office, is a longtime critic of the Obama-era Consumer Bureau, including while serving in Congress. He was tapped by President Donald Trump on November to temporarily run the Bureau, in part because of his promise to sharply curtail it. He hired somebody from the Bureau to destroy the Bureau. That's the point. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, he put somebody who was critical of the Bureau as head of the Bureau. I keep saying he's putting comic book villains in these roles. The important part to this, though, is to telling a bunch of bankers and lobbyists, if you were a lobbyist who never gave to us, I didn't talk to you. If you were a lobbyist who gave us money, I might talk to you. At the top of the hierarchy, he added, were his constituents. If you came from back home and sat in my lobby, I talked to you without exception. If you were a lobbyist from back home, good job. You got my ear regardless. Good for him on being open to the lobbyists from back home. If you gave us money, however, I may talk to you. You have my ear. If you didn't give us money, you don't have my ear. You don't have my ear. I don't care what you have to say to me. If you didn't give me cash, I can't hear you. I have a thing in my ear that prevents me from hearing you at that point. This is not just him, by the way. This is how Washington works. Take a look at this. This is Republican. House Republican. My donors told me to pass the tax bill or don't ever call me again. This was during Trump. Essentially, the guy, this Republican was saying that my donors, the people who are giving me money, the money in my pocket, are telling me that I need to pass this Republican tax bill that is going to give them massive discounts or massive tax cuts, not to mention raising taxes on everybody else, the middle class. If you don't pass this grotesque bill that's going to lower my taxes, then forget my phone number, lose my phone number. I put an investment in you, mister, and it's time that investment pays off. He's saying this openly. This is not secret. This is not hidden. This is both sides of the house. This is not one side or the other. This is how Washington works. Call time for Congress shows how fundraising dominates a bleak work life. This is call time, 4 hours. 1.5 hours constituent visits, 2 hours on committee floor, and that's dependent upon how much call times they need to get, meaning how much fundraising they get done. An hour to recharge. Congressional hearings and fundraising duties often conflict, and members of Congress have little difficulty deciding between the two. Occasionally, even fundraising money from the industry covered by the hearings, they skip. Listen to what he's saying. The industries that they're supposed to regulate, sometimes they're skipping those hearings in order to go fundraise from the industries themselves. We're supposed to be regulating oil, but I am over here getting money from oil. I don't have time to be in the hearing that's supposed to be regulating oil. I have other responsibilities like fundraising and getting money from that industry. Let's start over. Congressional hearings and fundraising duties often conflict, with members of Congress having little difficulty deciding between the two. Occasionally, even raising money from the industry covered by the hearings, they skip. It is considered poor form in Congress, borderline self-indulgent, for a freshman to sit at length in congressional hearings when time could be instead spent raising money. Even members in safe districts are expected to keep up the torrid fundraising pace so that they contribute to vulnerable colleagues. It's a miserable business. What's my experience with it? You might as well be putting bamboo shoots under your fingernails, said Representative Larson, a high-ranking Democrat. It's the most painful thing, said Larson. They're no sooner elected and they're down making phone calls for the election of 2014. It hasn't changed, by the way. If anything, it's gotten worse. Former Representative Tom Perriello, now a top official at the Center for American Progress, said that 4 hours allocated to fundraising may even be lowballing the figure so as not to scare the new members to Congress very much. Congress members make the dreaded calls from a room in the office of Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee or similar one in the headquarters of the National Republican Congressional Committee. After votes in the House, a stream of congressmen and women can be seen filing out of the Capitol rather than returning to their offices, heading for row houses nearby the First Street for call time, or directly to the party's headquarters. The row houses, where Larson said he prefers to make calls, are typically owned by lobbyists, fundraisers, and members themselves, and are used for call times because it's illegal to solicit campaign cash from the official's congressional office. Oh, I love that! And they miss the irony of that. It is illegal to do this in Congress, but if we step out and go down the street, it's perfectly legal. Completely missing the point that the reason why it's illegal to do it in Congress is because they don't want your members bought. The point of the process was not to buy the members of Congress. The point of it was to represent the interest, the philosophical point, represent the interests of the constituents. They don't want people being bought. They understand that cash in that process is a problem. So no, they don't want you bought. Now, lawyers lawyers say, well, yeah, just because we can't do this in Congress doesn't mean we can't do it a few blocks away. And that's what they do. And they become obsequious to cash, on their knees, soliciting as much money as they can get. If they're doing this, if they're doing this grudging task that they hate of trying to get all of this money in order to run in their races and everything else, who do you think they're going to be beholden to? Is this not like a job in and of itself? And when you're doing a job, who do you represent in the job that you're doing? You're representing the person who's paying you. You have dollars or you have pitchforks. There are no pitchforks. You just have dollars. And that is how your system is built. Let's keep going. There's less turmoil and background noise in row houses compared to the DCCC call center, said Representative Brad Miller, who retired just this year. I go down to the DCCC usually to try and brighten up my colleagues who are down there slugging away, said Larson. I gotta give them credit. People make the most of it. They recognize it's the mother's milk of what they need to sustain their campaigns, and it's the only system that we have to work with. This is utter nonsense. This is utter and complete nonsense. As the Democratic Party, meaning you as a Democrat, have somewhat of a philosophical responsibility to represent the 99%. That's your task. That's been the iconography of the party going back to FDR. You have two ways of doing that. If the process has gotten to the point where you need all of this cash to run in the process, and everybody hates the fact that you need to get all this cash to run in the process, and if we're being honest, the fact that you're getting this cash and you spend all this time begging for cash on your knees, please give me cash, please give me money, I just need some money, just give me another hit. If you spend your life doing that, well, you spend the most of your time. One of the guys, Republican, Jolly, say he spent 75% of his time making calls. Think about that. He said he was shocked as shit by that. That's how much time they spent making calls. And if you're spending that much time begging people for money, who do you think you're going to represent in that process? If you hate begging for money that much, who do you think you're going to represent in that process? You're going to represent the people in the room, the people who are actually signing over to give you that money. I don't even see why this is controversial. I don't even see why this is mind-blowing. I think American public feels this, even though they're not necessarily in on the details on how explicit this is. Your congressmen are bought. The reason why a government doesn't work is because government is bought. It is working for somebody. It's just not working for the mass of people, and I'm saying that needs to change. Whether that's a Democratic Party or Republican Party, both of these institutions are bought. Both of them have different gimmicks and tricks that they play off one another in order to get elected. But both, at the end of the day, the people who control the levers are not the constituents themselves. It's not the people who are making the votes. It's not the large number of people who are making the votes. The people who they represent are the people who are putting money in their pockets. That needs to change. You have pitchforks or you have dollars. It's time to bring out the pitchforks. It's time to bring out the pitchforks. Mulvaney was just being honest in that moment. But if all of them were being honest, they would probably tell you the exact same thing that Mulvaney said. We leaned towards cash. We went towards the side of the cash. The people who had our ear were the people who gave us the money. Hillary Clinton, even her in the WikiLeaks thing, said it. If you didn't give us 7 figures, you're not going to get our attention. Meaning, if you give us 7 figures, you will get a visit from somebody who's a representative of either Hillary Clinton herself or a representative of Hillary Clinton. It was the cash. If you're sick of this, then stop having cash to be part of the system. You're in goddamn Congress. You can make those laws if you really wanted to change the way that money works in Congress. It doesn't have to be this way. This is not an act of God. You guys are literally in Congress. You can change this. You can change it. It is within your power to change how your Congress, how your races are run. It is insane that you would allow money to dominate the process this much while you're in Congress. Get rid of money from the process. Have publicly funded elections. There's a list of election issues that you need to take care of. But one of them, if you're sick of having the beg and on your knees plead for cash in this way, this shameful display of getting for cash, and mind you, a display that pisses off the public because the public knows in the back of their mind, in that little place of them that they don't necessarily like to go to, they know that you're bought. And you know that you're bought. You might come up with all these excuses, all these reasons, but at the end of the day, you guys are bending towards cash. When Klobuchar came out telling the Democrats they need to shut up about class, and the Democrats promptly shut up about class, If you don't shut up about class, I am not going to continue to give you money. That is both parties. It's not one party or the other. It is both. It's time for the public to say, I'm done with both. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm done with both. I'm not going to rant. I'm going to leave it at this. I'm trying to be concise in these videos. So I'll leave it at that. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.